Hey guys, this is David. Today we're going to take a fresh look at the Gerber Bear Grylls Fixed Blade Ultimate Survival Knife and see if this is a great knife, a good knife, or a knife that's just plain garbage. We'll check out this knife from just about every angle, and we'll talk about who this knife is for and who should consider a different knife. Along the way, I have a special surprise for you. I'm going to interview Jeff Freeman, the Knife Innovation Manager at Gerber, and the designer of this knife. We'll put Jeff in the hot seat and ask him about the early problems that this knife had and how Gerber responded and where the knife is now. I think you'll be surprised at what Jeff has to say. I'll also share insights from my own torture tests, and I might even show you some clips from me throwing the fixed and folding versions of this knife just for fun. Okay, let's get started. Yeah, so I can't remember a survival knife ever causing as much of a stir as the Gerber Bear Grylls Ultimate Survival Knife, and it's no wonder. Gerber has been around for over 70 years and already has a huge presence in the world of knives. Then they teamed up with Bear Grylls, hero of the popular Man vs. Wild TV show, to put together a hybrid survival knife that's priced low enough to make it hard for millions of Bear Grylls fans and the rest of us to resist. The Bear Grylls knife is based on the proven design of its big brother, the Gerber LMF2 ASIC, which isn't a bad pedigree at all. Honestly, with all the vintage bad press and assorted opinions lingering online, I really didn't expect much from this knife. However, when my Bear Grylls knife arrived, I must say that I was quite surprised with the look, feel, and the overall quality of the knife. My only initial complaint was that the knife was a bit tricky to get out of the package without slicing the knife handle or cutting the pocket survival guide, which is on the back side under the knife. So when you get yours, make sure that you're careful to cut the knife out of the packaging from the side or just use scissors. Okay, so the Bear Grylls knife is a medium-sized survival knife with an overall length of 10 inches and a blade length of 4.8 inches. This makes it slightly larger than the Gerber Prodigy and smaller than the Gerber LMF2 ASIC. This knife weighs 14.7 ounces with the sheath and 11.2 ounces without the sheath. This is significantly heavier than the Gerber Prodigy, which weighs 7.25 ounces without the sheath and 12.5 ounces with it. So this is a really meaty knife comparable in weight to the Gerber LMF2 ASIC. This Bear Grylls knife sports a drop point fixed blade that is made of high carbon stainless steel, so corrosion should not be an issue. A drop point blade design is known for providing strength across the entire length of the knife and is good for edge preservation. The knife is 3/4 tang construction, similar to the LMF2 ASIC, which means that this knife should endure just about any abuse you can throw at it. Okay, so this knife is made in China, unlike the Gerber Prodigy and the LMF2 ASIC, which are made in Gerber's Portland, Oregon facility. However, the knife still carries Gerber's limited lifetime warranty, and I guess being made in China is a trade-off for getting a knife of this caliber at such a low price point. I didn't sharpen my knife right out of the box and was very happy with the blade, but then again, I didn't gut or skin any game with it. Just to make sure, I'd recommend a few strokes with a Smith's Pocket Pal or similar knife sharpener. Like most survival knives today, the Bear Grylls knife goes from a fine to a serrated edge toward the handle. Serrated blades like this are saw-like and can cut through a much wider range of materials like wood, bone, wire, even sheet metal in a pinch. Best of all, serrated edges keep cutting even when you neglect to sharpen your knife. But following an afternoon of heavy use, which included throwing the knife for about a half hour with a reasonable amount of drops, it needed touched up. And I did mess up the serrated edge a bit as it fell several times in rocks after my throws. This was easy enough to remedy with my Pocket Pal sharpener. I recommend that you grab one of these on Amazon and include it in your survival kit. It makes quick work of touching up your blade and has an elongated cone-shaped sharpener that makes it easy to touch up the serrated edge of this blade or any other survival knife serrated edge. Honestly, some folks just don't like a serrated edge. So Gerber responded by coming out with the Bear Grylls Ultimate in a fine edge blade with no serrations. So you'll just have to decide which is best for you. My recommendation is, if you want the added cutting power and don't want to fuss with sharpening your blade as much, I'd recommend the serrated version. The handle of this knife is made from a special injection molded plastic that is covered with a durable textured rubber. Owners report that the handle is comfortable for extended use without blisters and has a good grip even in changing conditions. One thing that I really like about the handle design and the balance of this knife is its ability to chop. With the butt end of this handle a little bit wider, makes it natural to wrap your fingers around it. Chopping's made even easier because of the placement of the serrated edge and the mass of the blade. The Bear Grylls Ultimate knife also has 3 strategically placed holes in the handle for lashing this knife to a pole to extend its use as a spear. One of my tests for this knife was fashioning a spear out of a small tree. I used this knife in conjunction with the Bear Grylls folding version for my little bushcraft experiment. So I quickly chopped a less than perfect tree, cleaned the bark off of the essential areas of my pole, used the 2 knives to notch and trim my pole, and then I lashed the knife with some parachute cord. Then I had some fun throwing my spear at trees. Even after quite a few throws of my spear, the knife continued to be tightly attached to the pole. Okay, so on the butt end of this knife, there's a stainless steel pummel that is designed to hammer, pound, break, grind, and smash things. The original version of this knife that shipped in November of 2010 had some serious problems with the pummel. This problem was terrible for the initial reputation of this knife, since some owners reported that the pummels were falling off even after their initial use. With a ton of bad reviews still floating around the internet from early 2011, I felt it was important to give Jeff Freeman, the knife innovation manager at Gerber and the inventor of this knife, a call. Let's listen in and hear what Jeff had to say.
So, can we talk a little bit about the Bear Grylls knife? I know pretty much everybody's aware that it had some early problems right out of the gate. Can you maybe share a little bit about your perspective on what happened and how Gerber intervened and where we're at now?
Yeah, sure. And that was a case of, short cycle time, hurry up, let's hurry up and get to market. A lot of times when we shoot products off a tool, we'll test them thoroughly and get them out the door. This design was proven, it's a very similar design to the existing, the LMF2 ASIC. And so we felt that we could go ahead and bypass some of those initial product tests and just start shipping. Well, as it turned out, the supplier wasn't using the correct material that we specified. So if you don't inject and mold the same strength material, guess what happens? Your product doesn't act like it's supposed to. Once we found that out, of course we stopped production and got a lot of people mad at us for it. But we rectified it, fixed it, and then got a lot of bad press. And a lot of that stuff's still floating around on the internet today. That's just the life we live in now. You got to ship stuff. It's got to be tested and verified beforehand, and that's the big takeaway from that is never assume that the 2 or 3 links down the chain is doing everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. In this case, it was a sourced product, and we didn't verify and test the way we should. And Reagan had a saying back in the 80s, trust but verify. And we trusted him, we never verified. And our verification was when we finally got the knives and the pommels were busting off, and it turned out that was not the correct material that they were supposed to be using. But they turned around and made it right. There might be a few of those that are still out there. That's the thing. I mean, we have a limited lifetime warranty, but that doesn't do you a lot of good when you're, 5 miles from a truck or something, and something breaks. But again, if anyone has any issues or any problems, more than likely it's from that first batch, and those can be replaced. And actually, you can tell the difference by looking at the ring of the substrate down near the pommel. If it's really thin, then those are the original ones, and you could just, somebody that had one of those could just send them back and then give them a new one, even if it hasn't broken. The product now is as strong, if not stronger, than the ASIC. You probably beat the one that you have up a little bit, and it's tested and it's verified. It's the way it's supposed to be and was meant to be in the first place. Actually, pretty astounding. I think we might have left some money on the table with it because it's $100 plus product. Well, the good thing I think is a lot of people that wouldn't normally buy knives are buying knives, because they saw Bear Grylls, and it's getting knives into a lot of people's hands that wouldn't normally have bought one, So think that's a good thing.
In my testing, I threw this knife with plenty of misses and drops. I hammered stone, I used the pommel as a mallet while making my spear, and I also used it to hammer several nails into a hardwood tree, all with no problems at all. Owners from around February or March 2011 all seem to be very satisfied with the pommel now, and often comment on its ability to stand up to abuse. This knife comes with a nice sheath that is made out of military-grade mildew-resistant nylon. The knife is held firmly in place with an innovative and simple friction thumb lock mechanism. One really nice feature of this sheath is that the knife can be placed in it for left or right-hand carry. As a final measure, the knife handle is kept tight against the top of the sheath with the use of a nylon strap with a Velcro closure system. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of Velcro straps for holding larger knives, but since this strap is not essential for keeping the knife in the sheath, I can live with it. It's really not a major concern, since this knife is really made for the masses, not the military. A real nice bonus of this knife is that there's a diamond sharpening stone built into the sheath just behind the knife. One surprisingly cool innovation that's included with this knife is the fire starter rod that locks firmly into the bottom of the sheath. I honestly was surprised at the tight, precision fit of the rod in its storage port and the overall quality of this rod. Fire is important when you camp out, and even more important in a survival situation. So this fire starter is a welcomed addition that is both durable and well designed with a solid handle. On the back of the knife, there's a striker notch. Angle the blade slightly and strike the rod to generate fire-igniting sparks in any weather condition. A small but loud emergency whistle is incorporated into the lanyard at the butt end of this knife. This is a nice feature if you're in trouble or injured. Of course, some are going to want to remove the whistle and the lanyard, as they can have a tendency to get caught when moving through thick brush or densely wooded areas. Honestly, for me, one of the first things I did was take the whistle off, because it quickly got in the way of my testing. Regardless of all this, the whistle is a nice bonus that is well built and could come in handy in a pinch. A pouch is sewn into the back of the sheath, which holds a basic survival guide that was put together by Bear Grylls. The guide is made out of a soft, durable, and weatherproof plastic sheet. This guide may be the most important bonus offered with this knife, because it'll aid anyone, even the most inexperienced explorer, in staying alive in a wilderness survival situation. The only problem I had with this guide was getting it back in the pouch. It's a really tight fit, so it's not going to slip out and get lost in the trail, but you'll have to work at it a bit to get it to fit back in the pouch after you take it out. So let's talk about the price. For a knife comparable in quality, style, and design to the LMF2 ASIC, it's amazing that this knife's street price is around $50 on Amazon. That's pretty darn good for a knife of this caliber, especially with all the extras. Reviews for this knife usually average around 4 out of 5 stars, and this is really astounding considering all the bad reviews that are factored into the equation for its early Pummel issue. So who's this knife for? Well, the Gerber Bear Grylls Ultimate Survival Knife is a great choice for camping, hiking, backpacking, maybe even hunting, certainly for emergency preparedness and home security, and even general peace of mind. However, if you're looking for a military or tactical knife, look elsewhere. There's a lot better choices than the Bear Grylls Ultimate Survival Knife. It's not really purposed for these scenarios. That being said, the Gerber Bear Grylls Ultimate Survival Knife is an impressive value, rivaling the Gerber LMF2 ASIC in design, durability, and craftsmanship. And with its fire starter, emergency whistle, diamond sharpener, and survival guide, it's more like a wilderness survival system than just a knife. And all for a crazy low street price of around $50. Okay, so I've just taken a look at the Gerber Bear Grylls Fixed Blade Ultimate Survival Knife. So this is David with GerberSurvivalKnife.org. I hope this review has been helpful to you and you're a bit closer now to finding the best knife for your needs. See our full reviews on the Gerber Prodigy and the Gerber LMF2, and check back often for more reviews on other great military, tactical, and survival gear. And I hope to see you on the other side.